Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Welcome to a new series. This is the regular Wednesday video and it's viewers requested videos. So this is where my viewers have left a request for me to do a specific video. I'm not prioritising them or anything. Some are going to be pretty long, some will be quite short. I may combine a couple together now and again, which is what I'm doing today. So if you want to find out what the second one is, you'll have to watch the first one, won't you? Because I'm not telling. Contrived or what? The idea is that the person who requested the video, obviously the question gets read out, the request gets read out, it's not a question, and well, could be, and as this one is, come to think of it, and who actually requested the video. So I've got enough to go well into the new year now, and obviously people will add new ones in. If anybody requests a video that's already on my list, I'll just add their name so that it would be like requested by several people. Now, I was going to do the resting dendrobiums today, but it's only just the beginning of November, and this year, where I live, we're not really into the rest yet because it hasn't got cold. Yes, the days have got short, but I'm compensating for that with lights. So it's the temperature that hasn't dropped yet. We're still getting mild temperatures day and night. We had a little cold snap, like 2 or 3 days, but it didn't get down to freezing yet. So I'm going to leave that one for a week or maybe 2. So we shall see. Right, the one I'm going to do today could be very long-winded, but I'm going to keep it relatively short. Now this was requested by Wanda Shaw, who's a regular viewer and regular commenter. Yeah, I said that right. And it's how I started with orchids. Now we could go back to in the beginning, in the very, very beginning, I actually had a white phalaenopsis when I was at college, and that was a very, very, very long time ago. Only just come past the caveman stage then. Yeah, a long time ago. So I probably didn't even know it was an orchid in those days. I had no interest in the subject of orchids that far back. And I moved to various places from college. I settled in Dorchester for a while, no orchids at that period in my life. I moved to Swindon with work. I wanted a better job basically and got one, but it meant moving to Swindon. Not my favourite town. I had a nice house there, I really liked it, apart from the fact it was in a little road that came to a dead end, and at that dead end was the intercity railway line, so you'd be sitting there in the evening and as the flipping trains thundered past. They weren't too bad because they thundered past. The worst ones were the huge big goods trains that trundled. They didn't go very quick and they're about 20 miles long, you know, they seem to go on forever. But yeah, no orchids again there. And then from there I moved to, let me think, come on, am I missing one out here? No, I moved to the place that I spent the longest at, where the kids were born and brought up, partially. And at that point, I started getting a few orchids. Now, I can't put a time on that, I can't put a year to it, but it's got to be 40 years ago, something like that. And basically I started like most people. I had some phalaenopsis round the house, so they were like house plants, so I had no definitive interest in orchids because I also had other types of house plants in those days. Used to have some geraniums, pelargoniums, whatever you want to call them. I had some fuchsias. I think I had a cheese plant in the corner, you know, it takes up the whole corner of the room. I'm pretty sure I had one of them. But varied, no specific interest in orchids yet. And in amongst those Phalaenopsis, I know I had a Sharry baby because well, my kids said I ought to buy it. We were going round a garden centre getting something, I forget what it was, and this fragrance was following us around, and we tracked it down to this orchid amongst the Phalaenopsis that was quite different, totally different leaves and everything. So we bought it. So I had my first Oncidium, you know. It lasted quite a long time. It did eventually die. Or it might have started looking tatty and got thrown out, you know, I don't know. It's too long ago. Anyway, I stayed at that house a very long time. I lived in Wales for a while with work, and I had no orchids then, so I must have got rid of them, the ones I had. There weren't many, it's just a few, like I said, like houseplants. But I sold that house, and I had a period where I sort of had a place in Wales. It was just it's not much more than an apartment really. It was a normal house with a staircase, but I didn't use the downstairs. I only used the upstairs, and I decorated it, and I lived there for a while. And then from there, where did I go after that? After that, I must have gone to where the place I've just come from. And stayed there for some considerable time. Yes, so that would be the sequence. Now, in that place, I did get a few orchids. Again, I was relatively new to the house, and it seemed bare, if you know what I mean. I didn't have a lot of furniture in those days because I'd come from a very small place, you know, so I didn't have much. And plants brighten up a place, they make it feel like home, so I definitely got some orchids in. Again, that probably was Phalaenopsis, but I'm pretty sure in amongst those orchids there was definitely one Cattleya, and there were some Oncidium types, the mass-produced types that you get, you know, in your local supermarket, DIY place, garden centre, that sort of thing, not specialist nurseries or anything. So I would say that that is the point the collection started, and that progressed to the point where I had no windowsills left. Now I know this is called How I Started, but I'm going to bring it up to now. So I've got all my windowsills that I can use, full of orchids. I had some orchids on the dining room table because it got a reasonable amount of light through the conservatory, and I kept looking at that conservatory and all the bright light. I mean, I had a sofa out there and a coffee table and that. The cats used to sleep out there in the sunshine, but it was freezing cold in the winter and boiling hot in the summer. It had periods where it was just right, and you could go out there with, you know, with a book that I would pretend to read, because I don't read books, you know me, you know, and a coffee, and sit down and have a doze in the pleasant temperatures. But those were a bit thin on the ground, so I thought I can get this conservatory to work. There are people that grow their orchids in a conservatory, so we need to work on it. Now the problem with that one was it was facing southwest, so two-storey house. As the sun came over the roof, it hit the conservatory. Even in the winter that happened. Even though it was low in the sky, there was nothing in its way. So even though it was right down low in the sky, it still hit the conservatory. It didn't go right down to the floor, but it hit the glass. And then it moved round until eventually it set. In the winter, that was like, there was a huge big tree that filtered light came through because there's no leaves on it, deciduous tree, and then it set. And then gradually, as the season progressed and the sun got higher, it didn't really hit the conservatory any earlier in the day, but it hit it at a higher angle. It did arrive a bit earlier in the day, but the house was always in the way. So even though it rose in a different place, it still had to come over the house, if you see what I mean. So But it used to set farther and farther round as the season progressed towards midsummer, to the point where the conservatory could be in the sun on a sunny day from 11 o'clock in the morning until the sunset. That could be 9, 10 o'clock at night when it finally went behind another house. But as the season progressed, the tree that I got filtered light through in the winter obviously became a leaved tree, and for part of the year the sun went behind there from around midday to sort of 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then came out the other side. But in midsummer it was high enough that it went over the top of that, so the conservatory was in full sun. Sun through glass equals heat. Nothing you can do about that. It's a physical process that takes place. If you put shade netting on the outside of glass, you do restrict some of that heat getting through. And that's what I did. I put my shade netting on the outside to try and reduce the heat, because don't forget, at this point I'm just giving you the outline of the conservatory. We haven't got any plants in there yet. I still haven't sorted it out from being too cold and too hot. So put a layer of shade netting on the outside. It made a little bit of difference to the temperature. And I had to wait a few days. I remember this. I was thinking, come on sun, because until the sun came out I didn't know whether the shade netting had done any good. Anyway, it made a bit of difference, but not enough, so I put a second layer on. Made some more difference, but still not enough. It was still too hot on a sunny day. You know, we were up 35 plus. I wasn't prepared to put up with that. So I put some shade netting on the roof. That made probably a bigger difference than 2 layers on the sides. But we'd finally got the temperature lower, but still not low enough. And what it basically was that it was a conservatory with a door into the garden, but you couldn't open the door because the pillar that the door was attached to was rotted at the base. So if you opened the door, it pulled the pillar away from the building and the door tried to fall off. So it was locked shut. There was a window. First time I opened that, the glass fell out. That was also rotten. I bodged it back together and jammed it back in the frame and put 2 screws in it. So I had no way of letting the heat out. So that was the next stage. How do we get the heat out? We need an extractor fan. So heat rises, I needed that as near to the roof as possible. I've got glass panels all round, so I thought I need to replace a glass panel with a timber panel so that I can cut a hole in it and have an extractor fan. And would you believe it, the panel of glass came out quite nicely from the frame and then just shattered. It took me and my son about 3 hours to clear up the bits. You had to clear it all up, you know, cats and me. I used to walk around in bare feet a lot in those days. So anyway, got my timber thing in, cut the hole in it, got a big extractor fan, set all the wiring up and everything, and fired it up on a hot day. That made a difference. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, could still do with it being a bit cooler. So if we're taking the heat out, what are we replacing it with? And at the time, nothing. Where it was getting its replacement air from, I really don't know. Although it wasn't an airtight building, not like this one is. There were cracks and places where air could come in. And I thought, well, you know, if it's 28, 30 degrees in here, and it's only 22, 23 outside, we need to get that outside air in. So at the ground level, on the shady side, yeah, I put an inlet fan. And the inlet and the extractor fan came on as a pair, and they changed the air. That basically did the job. That was the final thing. Next, what do orchids need that other plants don't need so much of? Humidity. What am I doing? Sucking it all out, aren't I? So I needed a humidifier. And I had some of those little ones you have for your bedroom, you know, to stop your throat getting a bit dry. And it made a bit of difference. 2 made a fair bit of difference. 3 just about held up. So I had 3 of those like home humidifiers. We eventually got Hurricane Hector, which is now sitting down there shut down because I don't need it anymore here. Right, so we've now got the environment right. We can now get some orchids in. So get the shelving sorted out, get some shelving set up. Spare shelves that would have been on the bottom, means bending down and mucking around, so we take them off, wooden structure, a couple of screws and some wires, and we've got hanging racks which we can hang some pots from. Or perhaps we could mount some orchids. So we've now got an environment where it seemed reasonable to get more orchids in, and that's precisely what happened. The collection grew dramatically over the first, I'd say, 2 or 3 years of getting the environment suitable for an amount of types of orchids. A little bit of trial and error as to which ones, but I knew Cattleyas would be okay. I thought Phalaenopsis would be okay. I learnt the hard way. And I started getting a few dendrobiums, which I didn't know much about, but the more I sort of looked at the types of blooms you can get and the colours and the different ways that the plants grow, they sparked my interest. So that collection, the dendrobiums, grew faster than anything else. So that, and types of orchids got tried, some failed miserably. You know, I mean, I thought Masdevallias, these are nice. Cooler growing, well, we put them in the place where the inlet fan goes. But they don't like the bright light, and that side of the grow room's a bit bright. We'll put them over here. None of them did very well. I lost a lot. What else did I try that didn't do very well? The Coelogenes didn't do very well. Again, in the main, cooler growers. And some of the dendrobiums weren't doing well. I tried some different types and some didn't do well, and eventually it twigged it was the cooler growing dendrobiums that didn't do well. Yeah, so round there I had heat. I would have had incredibly bright light, including direct sun through the glass, had I not put heavy shading on, but that really was to stop some of the heat more than the light. But what we had as a bonus was, as the dendrobium collection grew, we came into this concept of winter resters, which is a subject I will get onto, as opposed to drier in winter. There is a difference. And I got some of those and I thought, right, these need to be cooler. Well, it's going to naturally be cooler in winter, of course it is. And really bright light. Where are we going to do that then? I thought, well, it's winter time. How strong is that sun? So I took the shade netting off. Mainly these orchids were mounted, and I twisted the racks such that they were quite near the glass, facing the sun, with no shading at all. That's as bright as you can get in the UK without artificial lighting. So that's how the collection grew. It grew because I got an environment that worked for many different types of orchids, and therefore it was allowed to grow. It did get to a peak. I think about 190 orchids was about a peak, but given the size of the room, they were pretty squashed up and there was very little room to move. The walking area, the bit that you could walk about in, was about 4 foot by 2 foot 6. Compare that with the amount of space in here. You know, the space I've got to walk around in here is bigger than some people's kitchens. This is much bigger. So that's how I got started, and then obviously my mum passed away and the house had to be sold, which meant I needed somewhere else. And well, I say unfortunately, I shouldn't say it quite like that, but from some point of view, there were 4 of us, 4 siblings. So when the house was sold, I had a quarter share, and that's nowhere near enough to buy a place. So I had to switch to renting. I had to find somewhere that had a conservatory if I wanted to keep my orchid collection. And I hit this catch-22. to keep the orchid collection, I really needed a conservatory, and all the places with a conservatory were outside of my budget. What are we going to do? So that's the situation we got to when we moved here, where income, in addition to pensions and things like that, was needed to be able to keep this sort of going. Now that's where we are now. We moved house. Hello, it's going to rain. I was hoping to do it before the next shower because some of them are pretty heavy and very loud. So that's how I got to what I've got here. I now grow cooler. I've got plenty of natural light. I don't shade apart from half of the roof for the 3 months in the middle of summer. No shade netting on the sides. The sun never touches the sides, so I don't get the heat. In really hot weather, you know, like when we have a heat wave and it's above 30 outside, I still only get to about 27 in here. No extractors or anything, you know, so yeah, so that's how we got to here, and we now grow cooler, so the likes of the orchids that didn't do so well around the other place because it was too warm are now doing much better. However, those that did very well because of that warmth are now not doing so good. So we're slowly but surely changing the types of orchids that we grow. So that's how we got here, that's the story. I don't really know exactly what sparked my interest specifically in orchids, but I suspect it was the range of colours and longevity of the Phalaenopsis blooms, which would have been the ones that you get naturally because they're cheap, cheerful, they're readily available. Wherever you look, they're for sale. So that would have been why I started probably on the orchid front. And you learn as you go along, you know, you learn as you go along. And I have one of those strange memories where I will learn fast and retain if it's something I have a real interest in. Otherwise it goes in one ear and out the other on the ground. I don't need to know this. Which is why I've always said I only research stuff that I'm either going to grow or have already got. And I don't bother with anything else because there's only so much room in this little box up here. It's already cluttered up. And yet I've also got a strange mind because I could probably recite most of the lines from a film I saw 30 years ago. But I'm blowed if I could recall the name of the actor who played the lead. I can see the face and you know I can picture all the scenes, but sometimes the name won't come. It's just there. I've recalled it from long-term storage into short-term memory and it just won't. And then an hour later I'll be doing something entirely different and I'll go, oh, I know who it was. That's cool. That's just called getting old, I think. Anyway, so that's number one. Right, number two is a little bit of a joke one, but I'm going to do it. And this was requested by Insa. And he basically said, why is it wherever you are and whatever you're doing, your cat will be exactly in the place where you're going to turn and tread on it, or tread on a paw, and then it can take revenge on you at a later date, because cats do that, trust me. Cats, if you harm a cat or really annoy a cat, it will harbour that until at such time it can get revenge. Revenge can take many forms: bite your toe when you're asleep in the chair, pounce on your face when you're in bed, poo in your slippers. I was just thinking in, what was it in? Red Dwarf, in the first series, where like they hadn't come across cat as a person, the concept of a cat evolved over millions of years, this smart dressed cat, you know, with the teeth and everything. At one point, the camera's on the room and the door creeps open and Cat looks out and goes, he's not going to find that one. Well, not till he puts his slippers on. It's a cat in a person. Strange concept. I loved that character, I really did. Yes, so how is it that cats are always in a place where you can tread on them, and then you get really upset and, you know I've done it. Right, what is the reason then? There is a good reason for this. The reason is we do stuff as people. Most of the stuff we do standing up. If we were sitting down, the problem wouldn't occur. And when we're doing stuff, we're facing things like kitchen counters, tables, orchid shelving. So what are we not doing? We're not looking at what's behind us, are we? And we tend to, I'm busy here, now I'm going to do something else. You turn round and take the step. And that's where the cat will be, because it wants a fuss. It wants to say hello, wants to be with you. So it's right there behind you. I would suggest the best way to deal with it is to get wing mirrors off your shoulders at an angle, so you can see what's behind you before you back up. Just a joke one. I had a good joke as well. Yes, an actual joke rather than a joke video request. I'll do it in. No, I'll do it as the guy rather than as me. Right. So, guy comes home from the pub, very worse for wear, clattering around, banging around like that. His wife shouts down the stairs, "What the hell is all that noise at this time of night?" So the guy says, "I'm trying to get this barrel of beer up the stairs." And she said, "Oh, just leave it down there till the morning." So he shouts up, "I can't, I've drunk it." See you next time.